Hello, my name is Dr. George Mochocki, and welcome to the Supervision series. This week we're on session 10 or chapter 10, and we'll be talking about communicating in a modern digital age with my team members. You're either taking me on a face-to-face class, or most likely you're taking me in an online class at a college that I'm teaching at, or in one of my workshops or training sessions that I'm doing. I utilize this as a supplemental review of what we've covered in the classroom, so you're not going to get everything. I'm just going to skim over some of the stuff that we've already been communicating. If this is an online class, this is in addition to the textbook that you're utilizing with me, or to the concept maps that's already provided to you, and supplemental information that has been provided to you through that course. But so it works out well as to give you a personalized touch within the communication process. I was trying to find the right words. And that's the hardest thing in communicating. Make sure you utilize the right words. Remember, I'm communicating to you at face-to-face. You see my both verbal, nonverbal communication. You see the written communication on the screen in front of you. But I can't really tell how you are going to decode the communication. I'm sending it to you, so hopefully everything else will work well within the communication. As a first-line supervisor, you not only lecture or give a oral presentation, you have to give them a handout, you have to give them basically a visual aspect. So communication is providing all my senses. If I could involve all my senses within the communication process, it has a higher probability of being successful. It has a higher probability that my employees understand my directions and what I'm trying to communicate to them. And in reverse, I understand by looking at their nonverbal and how they communicate back to me, that I understand that they received the message and I could give them proper feedback. So what is communication? Now I'm going to increase this by size just a little bit, so those of you who have the smartphones and everything else, you'll be able to follow along a little bit easier without straining your eyes. You could also use on that a little bit. There we go, 3. Okay. So if I'm going in this way, if communicating effectively. When I look at communication, it's from a receiver's viewpoint. I have to communicate to the receiver. Not what I already know what I'm thinking about. How do I convey this information? What I want my employee to do. So he or she is the receiver. And basically, they will tell me that they understand it through the feedback, either through nonverbal cues they provide me, or through an open-ended question, or a question specifically directed on one part of my communication that they want clarification for. And you're going to use strategies for effective listening. That's what this whole course is about, or this section. And how do I overcome barriers to communication? And then also men and women. They communicate differently. Men are more boisterous. Women are more, for lack of better words, more restrained, more conservative when they communicate it back. Both are very effective. But I should understand how each one's going to receive it. How I communicate to a man or a woman should be, the message is the same. It's just how the delivery may be just a little bit different, just adjusting. And it's not only men and women. It could be people from different cultures. How I communicate to them may be a little bit different, because I understand that if English is a second language, I got to talk a little bit slower. I also understand when they're communicating back to me, they are trying to grasp the right words to communicate back to me. And so I have to be a little more patient and not try to jump in. Let's get going, okay? So how do I communicate effectively as a manager, okay? Oh, I just jumped quickly here, so we went through the communication process. Let's look at the communication process. If I look by definition, communication is me sharing my ideas and message to somebody else. So if I look, I'm the sender, my employee is the receiver. Encoding, I encode it as a sender. The receiver decodes. I should just move these around a little bit. Makes it a little bit different. So remember, the receiver, I'll just change the process just a little bit. So the sender encodes, selects a medium. He tries to eliminate any kind of noise within the medium. That could be some jargon, how I write it, the words I'm utilizing. To remember, because I'm trying to look at this receiver, because when I send my message to the receiver, just moving my the thing around. When I send my message to the receiver, he or she, it depends where they're listening to. If I'm talking to them on a cell phone, or if I send it to them and they're having problems, I send them some images and their computer can't pick it up. So that's basically what create noise for them. So I have to be very selective of what kind of medium he or she could receive the message and what is appropriate for the message that I'm trying to convey to the receiver. Now the receiver gets the message, he or she has to decode it. And when decode it means to look at the message, do I understand what they're saying? Now if it's a face-to-face, which is the most rich medium that you could have, because I could see the person, I could respond quickly by the nonverbal cues. So he or she, if it's not the best, it's not a face-to-face, I have to, in my mind, think, how are they going to receive the message, and how is that group going to decode the message? And how do I know that the message was received properly for both the receiver and the sender? Is basically through the feedback process. So if I'm looking at this exhibit that you have that's already been supplied to you in my workshop or in the classroom that you're reading, encodes it, the message goes to something, I create the message, so I'm encoding the message, I send it, and the receiver decodes it, and then basically when he sends me or she sends me the information through a feedback, they encode it again, looking at how I'm going to decode it, and then I get it and the process starts. The noise in here could be any kind of static, anything that's going to be distractive. If am I using too large of a word, too complex of a message, too much. A message is 5 pages long, and I want them to give me to read it, and I want it back in 5 minutes. That doesn't make sense. So I have to pick out what is the most important things in the message that I'm trying to convey to the individual, that he or she could understand the message properly, and they could act on that message. In business, they always try to tell me, when I was going up as first-line supervisor, they says, keep it simple, stupid. And I don't want to say that you're stupid, but they're basically going to say, don't put all this, when you take an English class, they tell you to enhance and embellish the word. In business, I try to keep it simple, right to the point, so I understand that the person has a clear understanding of my message. So I don't want them to anticipate something or say, well, does it really mean this, or does it really mean that, because I'm confused. And the feedback mechanism is how they convey back to me, yes, I understand the message carefully. Remember, when you're giving a subordinate instructions, say, hey, I give them the instructions, I want you to do this, and then say, do you understand? And they're going to go, yep, I got it. Most people are going to say that because you're the supervisor. They don't want to look like an idiot to you. But what you have to say, you're saying, so what is your next step? Tell me, summarize what I just said. What is the next step? Now it's more than a yes. They have to say, you want me to take this out. You want me to respond to the customer. You want me to email you on this. You want me to supply whatever. Do you see what I mean? So it's not just a yes or a nod. They have to basically confirm. By doing that, it's not that I don't trust them or anything else. By doing that, I understand they know the message, what I want them to do, and then the second time they already decoded it, and now they're basically acknowledging up in here, and so they've said it, they heard me, they said it, they have a higher probability that the task will be done. And plus I give them a note and a memo later on. Okay, so that's the process. How do I communicate effectively? I have to always look, and we talked about this one already, push it because I just jumped out when I made it larger. So listening. There's two things. Hearing is basically, we naturally have 2 ears, so it's a brain registering sound. It could be any sound. It could be noise. It could be static. It's registering everything. But the definition of good listening, now listening, remember, God gave you 2 ears, 1 mouth. You're supposed to listen twice as hard as speaking. So trying to understand the full message and paying attention to what is being said by the sender. I'm the receiver, so I'm listening. And the rules for good listening are basically, and they have there's a list here, but it makes it's very simple. If I look at this one, for this whole communication, remove any kind of distraction, give the speaker for a little attention. I'm looking at the desk, I'm not multitasking. I turn around, I look at the individual, I ask him, can I take notes? I don't interrupt the individual. When the speaker hesitates, give a sign of encouragement, so I'm looking at him. I may hesitate because I'm trying to gather my thoughts to make sure I present it to you appropriately so you understand it, but at the same time, you may look at it and say, okay, go ahead, it's okay. Distinguishing between opinions and facts, control control your emotions. If it's something emotional, take a few breaths and say, okay. Or if if it's that emotional, you see the person's crying, or if you're beginning to be too emotional, say, I need a little time out. And what's the best way? 1 second. I'm going to take a little drink, not of booze or anything else. And what that does is just gives your mind and gives your whole thing to kind of get your balance back, for lack of better words. Be patient, do not interrupt. Some people need a little longer time because how they process what you just stated. English could be a second language, so they have to process to their language and convert it into your language. You ask them if you could take notes, and don't write the full page. Don't say, oh, stop. Just take, all you need is the bullets, like I do the concept maps there. And appropriate times, ask questions to clarify. If the person's talking, let them finish their train of thought, and then basically, I got a little, could you just say, what do you really mean by this? I don't understand. And then restate what you think the speaker's point is, and ask whether you heard him correctly. So that's basically rules for good listening. And, when I look at active listening, is hearing what the person's saying, actively decoding and interpreting the verbal messages, seeking to understand the facts, feelings the speaker's trying to convey. So, try to, if you're the speaker, if there's some emotion, some urgency, try to use a different tone. Don't be monotone. That will put the person to sleep. And then you're going to, and it's not their fault. You're just boring speaker. But you want to, I don't want to be real energetic or happy. They may not take me serious. So try to find that balance between the different tones and pitch. Because remember, the vibration. So I know when I raise my voice, this is important. When I talking at a monotone voice, it's just information. So I remember, I'm decoding everything I'm saying. I'm live. And that's the same thing when you're sending a message through the different media we'll be talking about. And stating what you understand the message to be. So that takes care of that. Now, what are some barriers? If I'm looking at barriers to message, it could be information overload. I give them too much information. Keep the information down. Personal barriers. And personal barriers could be a lot of things. It could be my perceptions of what you're trying to tell me. I'm trying to already second guess it. Or it could be my prejudice against you for whatever reason. You're short, you're tall, because of your cultural background, because you're speaking with an accent, or you're hesitant, or you have a slur in your words. And that could just be some of my own deficiencies, but there's nothing I could do about it. But I had to be aware as a supervisor to kind of, so I could push those aside and hear what he or she's trying to say. And other barriers that you could come in there. And other barriers could be a whole bunch of things. Variation in skill of communicating, how the information is processed, poor listening skills on the person I'm communicating to, inability to listen with understandings, and nonverbal communications. Okay? Now, physical barriers could be anything else. It could be at a distance. It could be time zones, telephone line statics, a distance from others, crashed computers, office design. It's very noisy. If you're a supervisor and you may not have your own office, but you have a work area, and it's something sensitive, always find an office, always gets noisy. Hey, let's go in the cafeteria. Take him out someplace where the person is relaxed and he or she could talk freely. There's other individuals around there, like it or not in an office, those ears are listening. So, try to control the physical barriers. If it's just something real quickly, having to take you out to lunch, look at what's appropriate for the message and the content and how much I want the person to remember. Or if I want this thing, if it's something that's very important, I will make sure he or she understands it, so we'll go in more of a quiet area. So when they're doing the decoding, when I'm giving them the message, they have the time to slowly think about it. They don't have all that other distraction and noise around there. And there's, again, misunderstanding, word choices, cultural differences, semantics, different words mean different things. If I say, hey, you're hot, and you say, hey, are you hot, because it's hot outside, you just assume I'm hot. But if I say, hey, you're hot, and I give you kind of like a wink, hey, you're really hot, what did I just do? My expression, my verbal, I'm not talking hot heat, I'm talking hot of attractiveness. Okay, so be careful, because and some other individuals, if it's English second language, I say, hey, you're hot, because I want to take them out on a date, or her on a date, and I wink at them, and they may be feeling uncomfortable. This must be how Americans talk. I says, yes, okay, yes, and I wink back to them. There's a misunderstanding. And try not to use jargon. The jargons are utilized within your department. You may have certain jargons, but when you're leaving other people coming in, they may not understand the jargon, or they may have a misunderstanding. So I try to minimize jargon completely, but it's just human nature. People are good at jargons because it's easier to shorten the whole phrase. But just be careful. This individual is not from your team. Make sure you are cognizant that you don't use the jargon. If you use the jargon, explain what the jargon is supposed to mean. Figure men. And here's this whole thing of misunderstanding. I look at it as a young lady. Somebody else depends. If you look at it stirring up, you could see that the facial changes this way, and now it's an older person. So once I see the older person, do I see the younger person? So you try to find that balance. Remember first impression. And the first impression is also, when I'm talking to someone, the first impression is the same thing when I have an oral communication or a written communication from another individual. Okay, so we turn that off. Okay, let's go verbal message. Verbal message is really clear. A message that consists of words. So oral presentation, communication, conversations, meeting, interviews. How I talk in an interview may be a little different than how I talk when I'm at home with the kids, or how I talk to somebody at a bar or at a church. So remember, at meetings, I change it. Is it a formal meeting or informal meeting? Formal meeting, I'm doing a big presentation. I'm a little more, for lack of a better word, stuffy, more conservative. When I'm in a general meeting with my team, I may be a little bit more relaxed, ties off, and my communication style is still I'm conveying the message, but it's at a different level of intensity, for lack of better words. Okay, and then formal presentations is usually more structured, dress nicely, have a power presentations, and you practice on those. Okay, some sources of nonverbal communication, and these are kind of there's a whole bunch. The book talked about a lot of them. Messages conveyed without using words, body movement and gestures. How I move. If I cross my hands, does that mean I am defensive? And there's a whole section in handouts that I've already provided. From the material that you've been presented. If you're looking at this as a YouTube, you could just search it, different body movements and gestures, and we'll go in a little more detail. Okay, tone of voice. Remember, if I raise my tone of voice, I'm upset. If I'm quiet or I'm real quiet, it shows me I'm humble. Okay, silence is a good way. If you want people's attention, just don't say nothing. Look at them and just go like this, and then all of a sudden, is something wrong, George? Now I got their attention again. Touch. Remember, in business, they tell you, touch. Inappropriate touch. You can touch them on the back, show that there's some emotion. A handshake is another one. Facial expression. Don't grin at me. You know what I mean? If somebody says anything, I get that smirk. A smirk may be viewed as a sarcastic response without even saying a word. Facial, eye contact, look at the individual. If I look at people from Asia or different countries, they have different eye contacts. They don't look a person in the eye because that's disrespectful to shows authority. So in the U.S., if I'm not looking you in the eye, and I'm saying not staring at you, but basically looking most of the time, looking at your eye movement, facing you, it's indicating that you're either intimidated by me or that you're lying. But I have to look at this. This person has the culture and they communicate a little bit differently. And I'm a real big one on nonverbal, coming out of marketing and sales, so I pick up a nonverbal cues. But since we're working with a diverse work group nowadays, I have to look at the nonverbal cues. Because if I'm looking at nonverbal cues, in the U.S., just real gems, there's a whole bunch of stuff. I don't have the time for all of this in the short 20 minutes I'm going to do this. But in nonverbal, in the U.S., if I'm nodding, I say, yeah, I mean, I'm agreeing. Yes, yeah. I'm agreeing with you. If you get people from the Middle East or maybe from the Asian culture, when I'm nodding, they're not agreeing with me. They're acknowledging that I heard you. Doesn't mean, yes, I want to go with this. Do you see how I mean? Just that one little change. So I'm all happy with it. They're agreeing with me. They're just acknowledging me. That's all. Instead of going, yep, they're just nodding. So be very careful. You have to understand your team, and if you have people from different cultures, do a little background. Not, even ask them. I says, when I'm communicating with you, do you understand what I'm saying? Looks like you're confused, but not in front of the whole group or the other people, because then they feel like you're focusing just on them, and they may feel a little bit self-conscious, and they're always going to tell you in front of a group, yes, I agree with you. take them out for a cup of coffee or something else, to sit them when it's just you and me, and say, hey, how could I communicate to you better? It seems like you're not understanding me, or because I see you, other people, you're asking them what I just said. I want to improve on my communication skills. If you ask for help from the individual, they'll most likely tell you what's an appropriate way of communicating to them. And then, I'm not stereotyping, but now I have a general idea when I communicate with a person with a similar background. Here's what I should be aware of or conscious of, okay? And then etiquette for proper distance, and then some practical tips. I think what I had, maintain good eye contact, nod your head to convey listening. Remember, listening. Now when I nod on the side of your agreement, lean forward to show interest, use a tone of voice to match your message, avoid eye contact, try not to avoid eye contact, look at the individual, don't stare at them, closing your eyes or tense facial muscles, excessive yawning, and some people are just tired because they party all night, or they work, they have 2 jobs, or they just had a baby, and basically they're up all night, and I'm looking around, am I boring you? You got something else to do? So you kind of look at that. So if I'm yawning, if I'm yawning, say, my wife just had a baby, and man, he's crying all night long, and my child was sick, I didn't get any sleep. Now I understand this. I don't take that yawn as boring or that you're bored with me. I understand that you're just tired, okay? Using body language conveys indecisiveness, and talking too fast or too slow. And, if I'm talking too fast, it could be nervousness. I talk too fast because I'm enthusiastic about the subject area. Talking too slow is basically, again, why am I so careful with my words? But you have to look at at that individual. Now, if I'm looking real quickly, when looking at a simple thing, when you approach to your team members, Americans on an average stand about 2 feet apart when conducting business. Middle Eastern staying 18 inches, so that's real closer. So if I stand too far apart, they may take that as a nonverbal cue. I don't want to communicate with them. Asian and many American cultures leave a space of 3 feet. How do you know if you've violated a personal space? Is when I come to that individual, they basically back away. Then I should take that as a hint, a nonverbal hint, that I should keep this distance. I have friends still a little closer. If I'm talking in a meeting and we're a lot closer, what's appropriate? The only time people come together is in an elevator. If I know in an elevator, they all come together, no one looks at each other, they stand like this, and then when the elevator comes, boom, all of a sudden it's like it's compressed, because I need to get in an elevator, my space, I have to, physical area dictates they have to be close, but the minute I come out, you see how the spaces, people go back to the normal distance that they feel comfortable with. Okay? Remember, okay, so we take care of that one. What else do we have? Now we're going to go on the other side real quickly. Now, part of the communication that you're going to do as a supervisor, you're also going to be doing presentation. Remember, a supervisor does a lot of training, does a lot of presentations to the work group. So when I'm looking at, before you do a presentation, even whether I'm doing this, I have to research the subject thoroughly. I research the audience. I have a general idea. You're in one of my classes. You're a supervisor or a small business owner, or you're in a management and you're trying to improve on your communication skills. And this is a required course, or this is a training that someone sends you into the workshop to improve on your communication. So, but when I'm talking like this, I have a general idea what I should go out there, but I may say something that may upset somebody, or somebody may look at this and say, what did he really mean? Then you go back to the resources, go back to the handouts, look at the material that you're reviewing, and now it should make some sense to it. Start with the focus on benefits that you're offering. Here I'm going to help you improve your communication with your employees. If you improve that, the morale is better, there's no misunderstanding, everything else that we talked about previously. Practice your presentations 1 or 2 times. I do a lot of recording. Sometimes I mess up at the beginning. I got to get into the mode, but I could stop it, I could edit it. But the more you get comfortable communicating, it becomes a lot easier. Okay, arrive at the presentation site earlier. You want to come in early to make sure that you have everything set up. You don't want to start the presentation and nothing's going wrong because now people are waiting. What the heck? It makes you look like you're unprepared. You come early, you set up, and then you talk to the people in the audience. Then you can kind of feel, hey, what do you think about this meeting? What do you think? So you can kind of have a general idea. If it's a brand new team you're talking to, you could have a good pulse of how they're coming in, how they're viewing the subject matter. Because remember, you already sent them a memo, you send them some information what the meeting is going to be about, that's proactive, or what the presentation is going to be about. And now, before the meeting starts, you're already getting some kind of feedback, positive or negative. Okay. Type of messages you're going to be looking at it, written communication, memos, letters, reports, email, bulletin boards, posters. When do I utilize these and when do I have a face-to-face? Depends on the message, depends how important the message is, depends on where your employees are. Does it make sense to call them in or just send them a memo? And usually memos, we're going to have a meeting next time, list what the memo is about. You could send them a formal letter to their home and read it. Reports is a whole different way of communicating. Right? You have all the data, but you want the summarization sheet, and here's what we're going to look at. Email is a good tool, but make sure emails, when you send it out, you still use the person's first name, similar to it if you're taking me on an online class, you're utilizing the form, always utilize the first person's first name. So when the emails go back and forth, because I may get the email, I may forward to somebody else. After a while, I may forget the headers. I just have this, so I know this was meant to Jack, this was meant to Sally, and so responded back. Instead of looking at the headers all the time, it makes it easier for me to take the information, process it, and decode it, and able to give an appropriate response to the right individuals. And then bulletin boards are nice. They're up there, selling. When you do bulletin boards, there's a lot of stuff out there. After a while, you got to clean it up because no one's reading it. I got more garbage up there. Ends up being a fire hazard. So maintain your bulletin board, take it down, make sure the information is timely and it's not offensive to anybody else. And same thing with posters. So it's not offensive to other cultures or men or women. That's not sexist. That's not racist. And it may not, some people, I'm not going to talk about the certain symbols. Some of them may put a Confederate flag up there. Sure, it works with, it's basically associated with slavery and may be offensive to some individuals. So other people say, hey, it's part of history. If I'm teaching history class, fine. If you're at home, fine. But here it could be offensive, and I want to minimize that. Because if it's something offensive, then basically the communication with other people, they're going to say, it'll be noise for the individual, so he's not listening to your message. If I come in there, I got a Confederate flag on there, and I'm talking to an audience that's predominantly African American or people of color, they may take that as the wrong man who's got the Confederate flag, even though I may not even think about it because I'm looking up from the South. You know what I mean? But did you see how the noise is there? They're looking at that, and all my message is now tainted. And I'm just using that as an example, okay? And it could be other things that you have in there. Choosing the message type. Okay, so when I'm looking at message type, do I send them an email? When I'll leave these two open, and it makes it a little bit easier. So when I'm looking at a different message type, which ones do I want? You know what I mean? So if I'm looking back in the view, let me go back in here, and I'll put this at 200. I think that'd be pretty good. You could always make your screen larger. So if I'm looking at different message type, time and cost. Memos, emails, real. That means I don't have to bring the individuals in. Because remember, every time I do a meeting, and the meeting's got to be structured. Here's what we're going to cover. Here's how long. It's going to be only 1 hour, and you're out. So make your appointment. Because if they're in a meeting or during a presentation, they're no longer productive. But part of the meeting presentation is that I want them there to use the new skill sets, so when they go out, and they can take what they've learned, so now they either improve customer satisfaction, or improve productivity, or improve relationship within the team. I don't do meetings. Most companies shouldn't do meetings just because we're going to have a meeting. And once in a while, just have a nice meeting, just a meeting that I'm going to come in and say, hey, you did a good job, we achieved our goals. That's a different type of meeting than coming in here and say, here's going to be our budget meeting. So I'm prepared for different meeting. I ask for feedbacks. I need for record or capabilities of the receivers. Okay. Now directions and communications. If I'm looking at directions and communications, I'm looking at downward communications. Basically, is messages sent from someone at a lower level down. I'm looking at upward communication, messages sent to someone at a higher level. I'm looking at lateral that comes across. Most businesses, remember, we're going through this whole series, that companies are more decentralized, more flatter organization in the region, so now your communication can be lateral. You only have one level, two levels, not much of a downward communication. Or you see the inverted pyramid. Here's the normal structure, top management, and everything comes down. Now I flip it up. I go from the workers, and this comes down to the top management, because they're the ones who actually are talking to the customers. They're the ones on the line. They're the ones who know what the problems are. They're the ones that knows how to improve the process. They know where the shortcomings are, because they're the ones that have to deal with it daily. Okay, So I have that. Now we have formal and informal. When I'm looking at formal and informal communication, formal is basically organizations. The organization says I'm a formal, and I have the ability to be formal on there. I can just do this with this. If I'm looking at, I got my magnet. I can make it larger without going into the software. So if I'm looking at formal, it's organization, and that's so I'm looking at letters, memos, reports, emails, bulletin board posters. Those are all formal communications. Follows the lines of organizational chart that we talked last series. Now, informal communication is basically organizational communication directed towards individual needs and interests, does not follow the formal line. So if I'm looking at informal communication, there's nothing written. I'm just talking to you. You and me sit down. I'm your supervisor. It's nothing. It's still a business maybe related, or it may be something. Hey, what did you do over the weekend? I heard your kid won the soccer game. I heard your kid did this, or your wife just was awarded for this, or your husband was awarded for that. But that informal communication is kind of nice because it brings people, builds up a relationship. You're still at the company, but it's not anything else that's task oriented, for lack of better words. Now, rumors and gossips. Rumors and gossips, like it or not, people like rumors or gossips. It's just human nature. You want to find out something that's not in the formal process. Our explanations sometimes unfounded for what's going on around us. So when I, as a supervisor, is looking at rumors and gossip, I have to avoid rumors and gossip. I'm aware of them that they're there. Don't put them away because rumor or gossip could hurt your if it's a rumor or gossip about an individual, it may hurt the interaction he or she has with other people. Rumor or gossip could also hurt my team. So I'm aware of it. I hear it, but I don't take much credence to it. I prepare to investigate stories they may hear, but be open-minded. It's just a rumor or gossip. The other one that I want to talk about is, and this ties in with the informal here. So remember, this is all formal, rumor and gossip. All this is informal communication. Is a path which your employees use in informal communication. So if you look at the grapevine, you cannot destroy the grapevine. You can try all you want. It's out there. The grapevine is an informal communication channels that your employees talk. And sometimes the grapevine could be 90% accurate, sometimes they're 100% accurate. Anytime you have people involved doing any kind of process, I'll tell somebody, but don't tell anybody else. I'll tell somebody, don't tell anyone, it's a secret. So it goes around. As a supervisor, all right, so remember, that's an informal communication. I can't stop it. They may send it through their own personal emails. They may talk to each other. They may just have some kind of a mechanism, or they, at the water cooler, or now it's on their forum or electronic version. They'll say, hey, did you hear that George is going to get promoted, or did you hear that George is going to get fired, or whatever? It may not happen, but everyone's looking at George. Everyone knows it except George, okay? But somebody eventually will tell George because you'll hear it. Now, the employee. Why did they use the informal grapevine? Situation that worries employees, if something's bothering and management's not telling me, will cause them to turn to the grapevine. Aren't satisfied with the amount of information I'm releasing. I'm going to find out one way or the other. He's saying something. I want to find out what he means. Actually, the intent of the meeting, they're trying to read between the lines. Okay, they receive from management. Now, as a supervisor, when I have to look at this, I have to be realistic about who's communicating it. Now, in the grapevine for a supervisor, I never ask who said what. Sometimes people tell me because a lot of times if somebody tells me who the source is, then I'll go right to the source. What are you talking about me for? So remember, if you're using a grapevine, most employees will not tell you, I just heard it in the grapevine. Remember the song, I heard it in the grapevine, but no one actually told it. I just, it was indirectly out there, some rumors. Those are just red flags that you should be aware of to investigate. Listen attentively to employees. Show genuine interest in the concern. When times are hard and employees are nervous, emphasize communication face-to-face. I know there's something in the grapevine, but we'll talk about it. Plant authentic, positive messages. Be trustworthy leader. Monitor it wisely. You can't stop it, but use it to your advantage. Gives you an informal pulse of the team. When I say use it to your advantage, I had a field supervisor that I took from another office. Just an example. Examples work kind of nice. So he came over, and he was basically some disciplinary problem, and the disciplinary problem was because he had one of his employees was caught drinking on the job, and he was trying to cover up for the employee, so it was disciplinary problem. So I brought him back, so he was problems, and so he lost confidence and trust with the manager there, so he was transferred to my office. What happened is that this was transferred in, on the south side, there's a big distance. Joliet comes all the way up to the northern office up here in the Libertyville area. So he was transferred into my office. Everything else worked. But the grapevine, I heard a grapevine. People were worried about him because they thought he was an alcoholic because he got transferred here because he was drinking, that he was an alcoholic. That's how the grapevine, remember the message in the grapevine? Something happened there, but by the time it got here, it was from mouth to mouth. The message was changed to make it more interesting, make it say, I got some information that you don't have. Yeah, so that's how the grapevine works. It works on emotion. So anyway, so it came in here. Now, I could have a meeting coming out here and say, Bob or Jack is not a drunk. Here's what happened. But I can't say that because that's no different than saying that, that's management just covering up. So in that case, it worked to my advantage. I know some individuals that if I tell them something, I said, don't tell anybody about this, they will basically put the information back into the grapevine. So how did he put the information? I told him, I said, hey, that indirectly, not that I heard in the grapevine, you know what I mean? I said, hey, Sally or Ralph or whatever, whoever I'm talking to, I already know certain people. After a while, you know who you could trust with information and who you don't. But those who you don't trust, they're a good way of putting information back into the grapevine to balance the message that's going out there subtly. So I said, Bob came over here. I said, I hope he's doing pretty good. He's a good manager. And yeah. Even though, I says, yeah. I says, he's really doing pretty good. I says, and then somehow in the conversation, I tried to say, that the reason he was transferred here, I says, he was backing up an employee that was caught drinking, and he didn't turn that employee in, and that's why he came back in here. So I know he's kind of looking, so don't go drinking or take him out for a drink or anything else. He's a little sensitive about that. And now what did I do? And the person's ears, you could tell by their facial, oh, Bob's not that drunk. He did this. What happened? The same employee that other people that were working for him would not trust him because they figured, is he drunk? They're always looking to smell his breath. Now they have a different look at them. The person covered for them. The person watches my back. I'm not saying that. That's not the behavior I wanted, but I just changed that around. And all of a sudden, he was more effective. Or I take an employee out for lunch. And I always take him out lunch at their anniversary or something. I'll take him out, and this time I take out a female employee out for lunch. One of my female employees, I take her out for lunch, and a lot of times I take him out this after hours. Not the lunchtime, maybe 1, 2 o'clock. I'll take him out to lunch, and then you have some other employees that aren't working; they're on vacation, and here I am with Sally, and she's an attractive woman. I'm sitting with her, and we're having lunch, and all of a sudden. They're in there, but I didn't realize they're there, and they see me, and then I go out. I'm just talking lunch and rewarding. We're having a good time. We're giggling. We're having fun. That's just who I am. It's not a formal meeting. It's informal. I'm trying to really, hey, tell me some good times you had at work. But by the time, in a couple of days, there's a rumor going around, George is having an affair with Sally. Now, I could go up, I am not having an affair with Sally. I just want, no one to believe it. He's trying to cover up. So basically now, the same employees, if I know who's doing it, coming in there, I said, hey, or in a meeting, I said, I want to congratulate Sally on her 20th anniversary or 5-year anniversary. I took her out yesterday at so-and-so's restaurant at 2 o'clock. I took her from work and I let her go home. After that time, we work at 4, so we had lunch and let her go home as a reward. All of a sudden, what did I just do? I put that in, or I told the individual, I don't have to have it in a meeting, I could tell somebody else, and now the grapevine, they put that, he's not having an affair, forget that, that was just, Jack was just coming up with something else, he just took her out for her anniversary. You see how I could change it around, and it makes it work into your advantage. You can't stop it, you can't get rid of it, you have to be aware of it, and you have to know, how do I feed it, how do I take it out, and sometimes I may have to make a formal statement, no, this is not right, this is definitely falsehood, but you have to be, remember, communication, you want it to be believable. You want it to be acceptable. And we have a lot of politicians. They say one thing and do another thing, and they're always covering up. And at the end, I'm sorry, instead of being straightforward. But you have to be aware of what is going on. Don't put your head in the sand. You can't stop it. And I basically use it as a way to, like I said, I like using it to see the pulse of the organization. Now, the other thing is I'm looking at different styles. Now, this is something I throw in there. Your styles changes depending on how I want to communicate the message. If I'm assertive, right? If I'm aggressive or if I'm non-aggressive, passive for lack of better words. Okay, so I'm just going to go through that. Make sure don't be too over assertive, don't be too over aggressive. If I'm too aggressive with a new employee, he or she's going to be intimidated to not listen. He's going to hit me, or just so afraid. Right? It's almost like you have a dog that's been beat up all the time, and I pick him up from the pound, and I just raise my hand and go, why? It's not that I'm not doing anything else. It's just it's a second nature. Every time somebody is like that, they're either in my face, spitting in my face, or yelling at me. So remember, you utilize those aspects. It's good to be assertive at an appropriate time. It's good to be aggressive at appropriate time, and sometimes it's good to be passive. So you have to look, when are you going to utilize these different styles to convey the message? Remember, that's your emotion that comes in there, and I think I'm not going to go with all of that on here. Okay, maybe real quickly. We're already in here. I'm already a little bit over. Expressing, self-enhancing, but does not take advantage of other. Pushing hard without attacking. Permits others to influence outcomes. Enhancing without intruding on others. Good eye contact. Strong, steady, audible voice. Facial expression. Now here's when I go men and women. Now men. It's a natural. Men are more assertive than women. Now, some women, because they're mentored by men, they come across being a little bit more assertive. Because they're assertive, other people may look at that, because most women are more of a nurturing type. I'm not stereotyping. In general, I have a lot of women that are very assertive, right in my face, meaner than men. But I'm not going to say, but that's an exception. But majority are pretty nurturing, team building, and everything else. They raise kids, or they have a different type of just human nature, different type of personality. Where men are a little more assertive. Just a lot of men that are very calm and non-assertive. But overall. But so when a woman becomes too assertive, all of a sudden other people think that she is a queen lady, or the B word. She's too over assertive. So you have to tone it down a little. And same thing with me. I can't be too over assertive, because I may be looked at as being too aggressive. There's a fine line. So you look at the non-verbal cues that individuals sending to you, and pick up on those and adjust your style. And aggressive, basically taking advantage of other, expressing, enhancing at others' expense, glaring the eye, not looking at them, looking at you, leaning closer to them. Leaning closer could mean two things in a non-verbal. Leaning closer, I'm listening, or leaning closer with that smile. You listen to me. Remember, I'm just making the faces, or moving away. Okay, and pointing a finger. It's okay to point here, not in my face. Someone's going to bite it off. Clench fists like this and going, yes, I understand. Yes, what else do you want to say? I'm looking at the nonverbal and frequent interruptions. Some people just do that. And non-aggressive is basically encouraging others to take advantage of me, timid, self-denying, little eye contact. And that's where a lot of people sometimes may look at a person from the Asian culture. Remember, not stereotyping, generalizing, slump posture, wringing of the hands, or weak, whiny voice. And that may just be your voice. You can't do anything about it. So you have to kind of compensate, trying to put that masculine voice, or that more assertive voice. Okay, so we're done with that. Last thing we're going to talk about, communicating in a computerized information age. Like it or not, this is it. Multi-communication. Use technology to participate in several interactions. When you look at my baby boomers, they may not use the internet and everything else. They want the face-to-face. Face-to-face is still active. Face-to-face is good. If I got something very sensitive, or something I want to talk about, I got customer complaints, I try to resolve it. Email, if it's not working, let's have a meeting. It's easier. I could resolve it, because it's the most richest communication. I could get feedback right away. Non-verbal, you see the person. So the internet is one way of doing it. Internet is basically a global network of computers. So I understand this. Intranet is within the organization. And when I use the internet, or when I don't, a lot of people have the smartphones or smart tablets. So that's a means of communicating. They have to come to my meeting. Hey, remember, there's a meeting next week. Hey, don't forget about. I utilize that in the course management when I teach online classes. I send them information through the email, through the internet. So they have announcement boards. You have the email as a reminding. All that is indirectly helping you remember. Extranet is basically connects internal employees with selected customers, suppliers. It's another way I don't have to meet them all the time. They're into my system where I could download information, or they could order information directly. Email basically has benefits. It doesn't have benefits, and this is the biggest one. I'm going to spend a little time in here. Benefits: reduce cost of distributing information, increases teamwork, reduces paper costs, increases flexibility. Be careful when you email. All right. Drawbacks: reduces cost of distribution information. Right. This one here does not belong there. Okay. Increases teamwork. Reduces paper. Oh, these are the same. So if I look at the drawback, I flipped it up. Oop, error in my recording. But what are some of the drawbacks of email? It can be misconstrued the other way. They don't really know. The feedback it takes longer. Let's see. Let me think of the other drawback. If I put everything in bold, people will think I'm screaming at them. Or if I use too large of a words, they'll mess up. One thing you have to understand with email: if you send in an email, real quick, general information shouldn't be longer than 2 paragraphs. If it's longer than 2 paragraphs, put it in another email, or send them a memo or attachment so they could read it. All right, no more than 2 paragraphs. It's a conversational type of speech, so a lot of times I would get, even when I'm teaching online or some of my training, I may get someplace on a day maybe 50 to 60 emails. In the corporate world, maybe 60, 70 emails. So when I'm responding, it's not a formal letter. It's a kind of an informal, it's a conversational speech. I may not be using the proper terms. I may miss a word or something else in the email. Try to write as professional as you can. Some errors, even though my English teachers say you shouldn't have any errors, remember you're typing, are kind of accepted. People say he forgot the and, or he got the wrong da, or the den, but overall they understand it's an email. Different than when I'm writing a formal letter or a memo. There should be no errors, should be no mistakes, because this is a document. Now it's a formal, it's good presented, you're showing, it's representing the organization. Okay? So I took care of that one. I have to do video conference, another one. Use video audio links with computers to enable people in different locations to see, hear, talk to one another. This is a one-way video conferences that I'm kind of having on there. Sometimes they have Go Meetings or Meeting.com where they could have the webcams, and when you're talking, you come up there, or you can see other people on the bottom, the different faces looking at you. So when you're doing something like that, get used to the webcams. A lot of you are doing the Skype, and the other one didn't put in here. If I'm looking at Skype and FaceTime is another way of communicating using the technology. Telepresence is advanced of one location. I got computers, and it's live with a microphone. Group support systems. I'm looking at different ways using computer software, for lack of better words, and hardware to help people work together. Okay? And how does that work? If I look at the software, I don't have to have a technician. If I got a problem with my software, I give them access to my IP address, and next thing I know, everything's moving. They can see exactly what's there. They get into my hard drive. Be careful. There's a lot of companies that say, hey, give us access, we'll resolve your issue. You don't know who's at the other end of that line, especially if you got like a Comcast or some of the other AT&T, what do you call it, security systems, where you got the monitoring. You don't want that individual to have access, and you got cameras all the way around to get access into your computer. Have enough issues. So at business, it's a little different because you got different conferences or support groups. But be careful when you're using software technology within there. Okay, because remember, once you let that person in there, they have access, and they are sharp. They're IT individuals. There should be integrity. They should have some kind of certification that this individual has it, but it's still human people. Okay. And then the next one says teleworking, a workplace where employee does part of his job at a remote location, uses various information, also called telemarketing. Some people will work at home, sales. I never would meet my sales team. They were out there. I'd bring them in once a month, but I knew they were alive. They were functional because every day they had to upload, download what they did, and all that information is. I may have meetings as a general meeting that I just call a meeting. Everyone's on the computer, and we're meeting with the webcams. But every now and then I had to bring them into the meeting because, like it or not, communication. After a while, they still need that face-to-face communication. I can't touch you on the screen. I could, you could look at me, but I can't touch you. But you could, so you need that personal interaction when in there. It works out well. Okay, so let's see. Did I cover everything on this thing? I think we did pretty good. And now let me just make this a little bit smaller, and so we can see what we covered. So I got successful presentations. You have the handout. I think this is pretty good. The biggest ones you have to look at is the listening. You have to listen, and you have to know your individuals, and try to minimize the noise. Try to tailor your message to the majority of the individuals that you're presenting it to. If I'm presenting to engineers, I use their terminology. If I'm presenting to my construction, I'm not watering down. I'm using their terminology. I'm kind of dressed more appropriately, so I'm not on a suit and tie. I may be in a Dockers, a little bit more relaxed, so they feel comfortable with me. You know what I mean? Because then I can sit down. I sit down with them. All right. So I address the message, and I use the terminology and the vocabulary that is comfortable for them, because it's easier for them. Remember, the whole thing when I'm listening and communicating, whether I'm listening or reading the memos, especially emails, just don't glance over it. Read it, especially if an employee is asking you for something. So I give them the appropriate response. So if I give them the response, they'll remember word for word, and it may not be, I didn't read that one little line. I ordered something online, and it basically says free shipping. On eBay, and what happened? It's free shipping. All of a sudden, when I'm getting it back, ready to pay it, at the bottom it says, I just put it in free shipping. You have to pay for it yourself or come and deliver it. Whoa, wait a minute. That wasn't in there. So basically, I picked that up, no payment. You know what I mean? So you have to be aware. I mean, in the other individual was someplace in a small comment, very small line. So be careful. I'm not saying this is extreme, but when you're communicating with individuals, make sure you're listening and you look at it, the individual. You could communicate to the team, so you give it to most of the team, but some people, members in the team, may need an extra explanation. Do you want to use that time effectively so everyone else go, I already know what you want? So that individual, I know that may be a little bit slower to process information. I may ask them, hey, Jack, Sally, come on over to my office. Hey, you understand what I want? I know a lot of times you have more questions, but you want to ask us because I'm tying, and you want to be the one that's asking all the questions, and you feel like you're not grasping everyone else's. We already know it because you want to leave. So did you see me? So I'm still communicating overall general materials, and individuals that I need more specific clarification, I'll pull them out and talk to them. Not at a meeting. I know you don't understand. Come over here, wait after the meeting, I'll explain it to you. Or you can say, come in my office, I'll show you or explain it. So try to give them as much, visual aid, handouts. There's some people, they may hear it, but they still need to see it and read it, and they'll process information differently. So anyway, that's my this is a section as a supervisor, communication. It builds your trust, it gets your work done, make sure they understand it. Don't take a yes or no. Have them restate what they want, what you want to do. Make sure you summarize. When you take some classes in communication, make sure you give them some kind of handouts to take notes, and they understand it. And once you have if you're communicating well, there's no misunderstandings. Customers are satisfied, you're satisfied, the team is working well. There's no reason for grapevine. There's no reason for rumors or anything else, because there's no misunderstanding. And you're an effective manager, and then you're ready for the next level. In the next level, you're going to have more individuals communicate. So once you master it as a first-line supervisor, as your organization grows, you have those skill sets. How do I present to a larger group? And because I'm looking at the different segments, and how do I make my communication able to be decoded by multiple individuals. And that's basically what your middle manager skills have, and your presidents of organizations, because they know how to communicate to all levels in a simplistic, easy to understand area with some examples added to it. So my name is Dr. George Mochocki, and I'll see you in our next series or in the forum if you're taking me on an online class. Thank you.